being a lighthouse for others is so important. Before you say, but Lexi, a lighthouse, what are you talking about? I'm talking about being a beacon for others. And to give you a bit of an idea, this weekend I actually shared with a number of people that I thought they were a lighthouse for others, but also about how people were a lighthouse for me. Now, some of you might know that today was Mother's Day, and listening to the Daily Fire from Brené Burchard, I was like, okay, so this is acknowledging what moms have done for us. But this weekend, I also listened to another training from him, and he was talking about lighthouses. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting concept. And then he started talking about the people who have been a lighthouse for him, and my mind wandered off. And I went back to the time that I was a teenager. And when I was a teenager, I was not a happy kid. Uh, it was, I was a loner. I didn't know how to express myself. I was awkward with myself. If life had stopped on the spot right there and then, I would have been okay with it. And fortunately for me, a high school friend of mine, her parents at some point told me they had decided to adopt me and become my foster parents. So we're not talking about anything legal here because at that time I still had my parents. And it was not like they were abusing me or anything. It's just I was an awkward teenager and I didn't feel that I was part of the family. It was like my brother was the oldest one. He got along with my dad. My sister was next. She got along with my mom. And I sort of was the awkward one out, which was basically the story of my life. But talking about that lighthouse, it made me think about a lot of things. And it started actually with me being at a cremation service. And here's the thing. When I went there, I didn't go for the person who had opted out. I went there to support his sister and her parents. So when I got there, I was actually kind of surprised to see like close to 300 people there. And I was looking at those people. Some of them were crying. They found support with one another. I listened to the stories and I realized that my perception of the guy was so different compared to what they had experienced. And it surprised me a little bit. And I was thinking about how my friend would be feeling right that moment because I'd learned about the inner struggles going on in the family. Now, here's the thing. They shared openly about this, so I think I can share about it too. Her brother had problems with the side effects of certain medication, and as a result, he started hearing voices. And, well, her parents didn't believe her at first. It slowly built up, but at some point they couldn't get around it, and we talked about it. I was there too when they talked about it. I even met her brother. So realizing the turmoil he had caused within the family, seeing all those people show up and seeing what a profound role he played in all those people's lives, and especially also the young generation, because he coached football teams. I was like, wow. I was literally impressed. So when the service was done, I walked outside and I saw a friend of Vero's. She recognized me and we got to talk. And she was talking to someone who later turned out to be the stepbrother. So I said, well, I was surprised about this side of her brother. And then the guy who was standing there talking to the other friend said, what do you mean? I said, well, I've got some inside information and, well, this is totally different. I didn't know this about him. Well, as it turns out, he was a family member, so he knew he had that inside information too. And, well, I was like, well, maybe you need a hug. So I said, do you want a hug? He wanted one, so I gave him one. Apparently, I'm good at giving hugs. So, yeah, I'm not shy at asking if someone wants one because it can make such a big difference. So later on, I was at a reception venue, sat down at the table, didn't recognize anyone. So I asked the people who were sitting at the table how they knew her brother, the French brother who had opted out. And as it turns out, I was talking to my friend's uncle, who was the godfather of the one who had been a lighthouse for so many people. A side which I didn't know. And as it turned out, this godfather was actually his lighthouse. And all combined, I thought this was so special, you know, talking to someone who he reached out to, who he went to, and he even shared, yeah, one day he was there standing at the door and I was in my bathrobe and I said, well, you can come in, but you know, I'm dressed like this. And that actually brought me back to being at my, well, called my foster family's home. Because I remember too that they would be in their PJs or in their bathrobe, or, you know, I could just drop by. I think I would call, I'm not sure. But I could always drop by and it was kind of special. So unfortunately, her father is no longer alive. He actually died over 20 years ago, over 30 years ago. But her mom is still alive. So thinking about the whole idea behind being a lighthouse, I posted something about the last 48 hours, now the last 72 hours. And I can tell you it's been hectic on my end, and that's an understatement. But the one thing I did do was I said, well, in the text I posted a cheers to my friend's mom. And I asked her, my friend, if she could send it to her mom and that I would call her mom at some point. So since it's over 30 years ago, you know, at some point some things happened and we got out of touch. But that doesn't mean I'd forgotten. And listening to that training, I was so aware of, wow, how we can be a lighthouse for others. And nowadays, my goal is to be a lighthouse for the people who are neurodivergent, and specifically for those who are creatively gifted, and then even more specifically for the young ones out there. So it's not that I only want to talk to the young ones. Don't get me wrong, because my goal is to actually go on a road trip or what I call the Chicago experience this September, October, and invite leaders to come over. And the thing is, when you are neurodivergent, you at some point likely will start working for yourself. And then when you're really good at what you're doing, you probably will need a team. And there's rub, because what if you don't have people skills? Because if you become an entrepreneur because no one understands you, then chances are that you do not know how to express yourself with clarity either. So the thing with the young ones is they're still at school, and I'm working locally with those who are in their 20s, early 30s. And I know what the result can be for them, how devastating it can be if no one hears you, if no one understands you, if you think differently, but people don't understand what you want from them. I grew up like that, so I know. And getting back to the metaphor of lighthouse, it was pretty special to actually say that to the Godfather. Oh, you must have been a lighthouse to him. Now, before I went live, I've been contemplating for a while what I was going to talk about. Like I said, it's been a whirlwind for me. The past 72 hours, it was hectic. But if I think about the moments that I got to support others, there have been a lot of moments like this in this weekend. And also being able to actually recognize and acknowledge the people who have been lighthouses for me. I cannot tell you how grateful I am. It was hard for my parents, I'll tell you, especially my mom. She felt put aside. But I don't think I realized how special it was till a couple of years ago when someone else started talking about their bonus family. And I was like, oh, I know what you're talking about. I had those people too in my life. And nowadays, realizing how important it is to just be able to be you. I'm going to ask you something. Do you feel, or do you know that, or if you've ever been a lighthouse to others, a beacon of hope, a beacon of being able to just be, to be able to recharge, to be able to vent, to be able to say nothing at all and just be? Because we need those people in our lives, people who listen, people who are there, people who let you vent without any judgment. And being able to be a lighthouse for my friend and her parents, I was actually kind of grateful that they wanted to have me show up at the house and talk on. So we talked until midnight. And it was also kind of special to share with them, like, oh, but I've seen such a different side of your son this time around. I'd taken pictures. I was in the back of the adjacent hall. So there were so many people, they actually had to open up another area so everyone could actually watch what was going on. And since they were sitting in front, they had no clue. So I'd taken some pictures and I showed it to them, and I shared with them how other people had been responding. And I could tell that meant a lot to them. And actually what I did in my turn was telling them how, well, I don't know if I said how proud I was of them, but I did absolutely cheer them on for having been so open about what happened to their son. So, like I said, he opted out, which was the result of hearing voices for many, many, many years who gave him assignments. And at first, they didn't want to talk about that. But then the one who was from the funeral home, she said, "You need to address this." And she was an expert when it came to people opting out. And she did it beautifully. And because there were so many people present, because a lot of those people, like I said, they were the young generation, they were the teenagers. And I believe that everyone should know about what happens when people hear voices. Because those people are alone. They cannot vent about it. They don't dare to vent about it. And when they actually might say, "Be careful, some people are chasing you," then that can be scary for you. But they mean very well. And by explaining this, actually, some teenagers came up to my friend and said, "Oh, now I get it, because he was talking to me as if people were chasing me and I got scared." And then my friend explained, "Well, that's because he was hearing voices. So he was convinced, and you matter to him, because otherwise he wouldn't have said so." So again, let me ask you, who can you show up for? And what does it mean? So I shared some examples with you, for instance, about my foster parents, about being able to be there for my friend and her family. And by the way, I wasn't the only friend who showed up. There were a couple of us sitting at the table just for her. And, well, acknowledging that Godfather and what he did. And yes, he got a hug from me too, and his daughter too. I noticed that they saw things from a different perspective. That mattered a lot. Lately, well, not just lately, but I guess that with time passing, especially being a coach, I'm learning to be there for others, hold space for them. At first, I was like, holding space, what do they mean? I literally see a space. But I'm beginning to understand the meaning behind it. You know, being there, being quiet, just letting it be. And, well, one of the things where others say that I probably have been a lighthouse, scratch that, where they said I was a lighthouse, was actually being at the bed of my cousin who was in hospice. I think I sat there for an hour at the end of her bed. So I talked to the nurse and I said, "Wow, I'm impressed with what you are doing." She was a lighthouse. She is a lighthouse for patients in the hospice. And I was impressed with how she did it, how she approached her, and how safe she made others feel, including my cousin. So when I left, I went to the beach. I talked with a friend about everything that had been going on, trying to be a beacon for her too, by the way, or at least support her. And when I left, that's when my brother called and said, my sincere condolences. So my cousin had passed on. And I know, I was sitting there and I was like, okay, this is not the time to talk. It's not the time to ask questions. So she was lucid, but she was also groggy from the morphine. And a week earlier, we had been talking in depth about some things related to the family, but also if she had done it all, and she asked the same thing to me. And this time I was like, I'm just going to sit there, maybe help a little bit when she needs to move, shift. And there's a different vibe when it comes to me, when I just sit there. You know, I'm sneaking in, I'm closing the door softly, and I take my energy sort of like down. So I'm only in the quiet mode, sort of like the observation mode. And that's about it. Just being there as a support for the other one. And it was kind of special to have that role. Like, hey, I'm here, I have your back. It's not that I can do much, but I'm here anyway. And knowing that her brother and I were the last two that she saw, except of course for the nurse, that was pretty special. So I actually called the hospice and I said, well, I want to say thank you to the nurse. And as it turns out, she was on her way out and she was standing there. So I said, well, I heard my cousin passed on. And then she said, yeah, I was walking into the room and she was having a hard time. So I held her, and that's when she left. She passed on. And I said, well, then I'm going to say double thank you to you. Thank you for having been there, but also thank you for holding her when she took her last breath. I thought that was so beautiful. And she was so surprised at me acknowledging her. And I'd done earlier when I was still at the hospice. And same reaction. She was surprised back then. And when we left, I was a little surprised because, well, we saw her sitting there. So I walked up to the room and I said, thank you for everything. And she said, well, we'll keep you posted. Well, actually, she was going to keep my cousin's brother, so my nephew, posted. But he at first didn't say goodbye. It wasn't until she started talking to me, because I did, that he actually did say goodbye. And it's such a different way of approaching people. I like to compliment people. I like to make people feel seen and heard. But I think it's also something special that all of us can do. You know, even random strangers. Just saying to them, wow, thank you for being here. Thank you for what you're doing. Now, of course, when I started talking about being a lighthouse for others, I wasn't just talking about strangers, although the two people I talked to at the funeral home actually were strangers to me. But I do believe that by making that connection, something shifted. And it made them realize, like, hey, yeah, I was that lighthouse. So let me talk to you again and ask you this question. If you listen to all of this, then how can you be that lighthouse for others? How can you support others, even if it's strangers, and giving them compliments? It's about being aware of your environment. And I'll honestly say that I can be as closed off as anyone, probably, maybe even more, especially when I'm deep in thought. But I also know how important it is to acknowledge other people. And it was kind of funny because where other people had said to me that I can be a bit much, including my brother, the friend I went to the beach with, she said to me, well, this is an example. And I was like, well, if this is the example, me acknowledging others and saying thank you for all you're doing, well, I'll take that role any day. And I believe it's a good thing that we acknowledge others, that we give them compliments. If they do something special for us, they deserve to know that we appreciate it. So maybe my question to you should be, do you actually appreciate it when people do something special for you? And in that light, I want to ask you, what do you do in order to be that place of safety and trust for others? What do you do when it comes to acknowledging others and giving them compliments? Do you dare to? Or do you have this attitude like, well, let's act normal, then I'm doing crazy enough? I don't believe that it's the norm to make people feel good, complimenting them. And it's something that I've been doing for years now. Partially because, well, I've become dependent on a lot of people if I want to maintain my freedom, whether it has to do with my mobility or when it comes to food. It's because people actually take the time out and are like, okay, I want to serve this person best. How can I do it best? And I don't take that for granted. I don't take that lightly. I think it's very special when people do it. So sure, I am aware that people might consider me a burden because I need some extra care in order to be able to do things. But on the other hand, if it wouldn't be possible, I know they would tell me too. It's not like I haven't been down that road where people just didn't have the time. But again, I've also learned, especially since I had those mobility issues, how people can get inspired if you share with them about certain things that you're doing that maybe no one else does. And like I said, paying them compliments. I always make sure that I have some extra bills with me when I'm going to the US airport because I like to give a little something. Sometimes it's also about buying a drink like a Starbucks beverage or something. This small token of appreciation, like I've seen you and I appreciate what you're doing. And that's why I said, how can you be a lighthouse for others? But also, who has been a lighthouse for you? Maybe in the last couple of days, maybe in the last couple of months, maybe throughout your entire life. If you think about it, you will know. It's about taking the time to actually think about it. But I guarantee you, if you start writing, you will come up with an answer. And giving it back to those people who have been a lighthouse for you, I can only tell you that's going to be so gratifying. It's grateful. It's passing on that message, but also being the one who is the beacon, there's something really special about it. And I hope you get to experience that feeling too. But it does start with recognition, and it does start with seeing people for what they are doing. Well, let me finish by saying this part. Being a lighthouse can be linked to so many things. And one of the things is about believing in yourself. So for those who don't know yet, not upcoming Monday, but the week after, I'll be hosting a challenge, Rewriting Your Inner Story. And I believe that being a beacon for others is part of that inner story. So we probably need others to support us first. But just think about it, what it's like if you are supporting people, whether you know them or not, but letting them know you mattered, you did something special. It's going to boost them with so much energy and so much pride. And as a result, they will be able to show up for others too. So let me know, leave a comment, and think about how you would like your story to change. And then pair it with the thought of how can you be a beacon for others? Let me know what you think about this concept.